Again, I'd like to welcome all of you for the webinar today. First up, we have Kevin Springman with the Department of Education, the PA Bureau of Career and Technical Education with us, and he's going to discuss some of the state updates and state requirements with you. Kevin?
Hello, can everybody hear me?
We can hear you, Kevin.
Great. I'm Kevin Springman, and on behalf of the Bureau of Career and Technical Education, welcome to the Fall Student Occupational Competency Testing webinar. I want to let you know Manager Frank D. Natal can't be here, but he does send his regards. First, I want to thank Patty, Lori, and company for rescheduling things after the technical problems that we had last time, and for the flexibility to go to presenters, being able to reschedule in this short time period. I also, before I start, want to thank all the test site coordinators who helped with the PA Secure ID mismatches that we had with the files to upload into PIMS. We had the lowest number of mismatched IDs this year, and it's becoming really, really important, particularly now that we're looking at the program level data, and we have this performance report coming out that we're actually going to be discussing at the SAS Institute on Thursday, where the schools are going to have much of the testing information available to the public and attributed back to the school district. So the accuracy of the PA Secure IDs becomes very important, so we make sure that everybody who tests is included in our data set, and bad IDs cause them to not be part of the data set in PIMS. Okay, last, before I start, I just wanted to let you know that we do have a question and answer period, but I'm not going to get into individual cases. If you have kind of an individual question about a particular student situation, please send me an email, and I'll get back to you with an individualized answer with regard to that, because it can get into complexities that would take quite a period of time to go through. Okay, to start, in the testing manual, we say that you need to test concentrators anticipated to graduate. Now that sounds pretty straightforward, but every year we get quite a few questions that go back to the regulatory guidance that goes into that short statement. So what I'm going to do here is go into the different regulatory references and give you a background on how that statement came about and what goes into it. Now you can find most of the references to the regulatory guidance at two websites. I'm going to just give you those. I don't have those listed on the outline. The first one is www.pacode.com, pacode.com, and that will give you the Pennsylvania Code reference information. And the second website is www.cte.ed.gov, and that will give you the Perkins definitions if you're interested in them. Okay, I'm going to start out talking about Chapter 4 of Title 22 of the Pennsylvania Code. And more specifically, I'm going to first look at Chapter 4.31, and this contains the basic regulatory information on why we're testing secondary students in CTE programs. I'm just going to read you the section so you get the flavor for exactly what the regulation says about testing and can see how that fits into our regulatory framework. Okay, in Section 4.31a, It says students who complete approved vocational technical education programs shall have their occupational competency assessed by completion of the appropriate assessment under the Pennsylvania Skills Certificate Program or by completion of another occupational competency assessment approved by the department. A student with a disability shall be provided appropriate accommodations when provided for in the student's individualized education program.
Kevin, I hate to interrupt you for one moment. We're getting some feedback that you're hard to hear, so if you could speak a little louder, that'd be great.
Okay, I'll try to move the mic closer to my mouth and see if this helps a little bit.
Thank you.
Okay, that statement gives you the basis for the requirement to assess technical competencies in the career and vocational programs. There's a little more detail when you move farther down. Section D of 4.31 says vocational technical education courses must include content based on occupational analysis, clearly stated performance objectives deemed critical to successful employment, and assessment of student competencies based upon performance standards. Then Section E says the record of a student enrolled in a vocational technical education program must include the student's educational and occupational objectives and the results of the assessment of student competencies under subsection D. So that forms the basic requirement to perform occupational testing in our secondary vocational education programs. Now, a lot of times we have questions about when should the students be tested. Okay, we have the regulation that they're to be tested other than those programs that have a waiver, and there are a few of those. The question comes up about when should we be testing, and the guidance in the testing manual has been test when the student is anticipated to graduate, and that really comes about due to Chapter 339.22 of Title 22 of the Pennsylvania Code. And that's part of Chapter 339, which is program approval information. And basically there's a time requirement section to 339. And the relevant reference would be in Section 9, minimum time requirements. Item 2C states that sequences shall be offered in consecutive years, and the last year of the program will conclude in the 12th grade. So in essence, the programs are to conclude in the 12th grade by regulation, and we're assessing the competencies across the programs, so they're end of program assessments. And that's the reason that we have the guidance for testing students anticipated to graduate. Okay, now the next two items are interrelated. Most of you are probably familiar with the Perkins 4 indicators, and the Chapter 339.4 is actually tied to the Perkins definitions. So the Chapter 339.4 has to do with the requirements of a program to retain approval. So this is part of the program approval process that has been basically upgraded the last couple years to include the Perkins indicators for each program. And this comes from a section in 339.4 that basically states that skill attainment targets as set forth in the school's entity local plan, if applicable, will be, which may include industry assessments, industry credential certification, or state assessment, shall be required with the program approval to meet those standards. Excuse me. Now, the skill attainment targets are tied to the Perkins 4 definitions. And so I'm going to read the definition for the technical skill attainment, which is one of our Perkins 4 indicators. And these are numerator and denominator. They form a percentage. We have targets at the local level for the fiscal agent, for each fiscal agent under Perkins. We also have state targets that we report to the federal government. Okay, the numerator is the number of career and technical education concentrators who successfully achieve competency levels at or above the competent level on the NOCTI job-ready occupational specific assessments or achieve competency on other PDE-approved tests in the reporting year. And that numerator, those who are competent or above, are over a denominator of the number of career and technical education concentrators who complete the NOCTI job-ready occupational specific assessments or other PDE-approved tests in the reporting year. So it's really a percentage of students, concentrators, who are competent or advanced on the NOCTI or NIMS. NIMS is the only other PDE-approved test at this point. And those numbers form the technical skill attainment indicator that is compiled at the local level by school, at the fiscal agent level for the Perkins fiscal agents, and also at the state level for reporting to the federal government. Now, tied to that definition is a definition of a concentrator. And the definition of a concentrator falls under the Perkins 4 regulatory guidance. And I'll just read this briefly and then go into a little more explanation. Concentrator is a student who, by the end of the reporting year, was reported as having earned at least 50% of the minimum technical instructional hours required for Pennsylvania Department of Education program approval. So we get a lot of questions about the concentrator definition every year, and the thing to keep in mind is that having earned 50% really means successfully earned. So if a student doesn't pass a technical course, they haven't earned the hours that that course is assigned in the CAT system. And when we're talking about the technical instructional hours required, those are the number of hours in the CAT system. So the concentrator are those students who have successfully completed at least 50% of the minimum technical hours as outlined in CATs. So those are the basic components of our statement in the testing manual to test concentrators anticipated to graduate. One confusion that comes up with the concentrator definition that I'll just throw out at this point because it would probably come up as a question is that we used to focus more on completers. Right now, the completers are only really used for the state budget definition. And that's compiled from data that's in PIMS, and there is a set of definitions in PIMS called CT status type codes that identifies the completers. And basically, a completer is a secondary concentrator who, one, completed all components necessary to achieve his or her career objective, two, completed a PDE-approved occupational end-of-program assessment, and three, attained a high school diploma or equivalent. And that definition is located in Appendix P, CT status type codes, under completed CT program and graduated, or Code 40, in the PIMS manual for your reference. Okay, now I also wanted, I'm not going to get into specifics here, but I just wanted to point out that the IEP team, moving on to accommodations, I just wanted to make a few statements about this, because we've had quite a number of questions come up on an individual student basis. And so I just wanted to make clear to everybody that for the accommodations, the most important thing, I think, is to utilize the IEP team. The IEP team has already worked with the student, has developed accommodations prior to the testing that's used in the classroom and for other tests, and they should be a primary source for the accommodation question with IEP students. We have a PASA exemption for NOCTI testing, but all students with IEPs who participate in the PSSA or Keystones should be tested if there's no waiver on the crosswalk. We're trying to encourage schools to utilize the 13th year in an IEP to give the student more time to finish the program, and testing then can occur in the 13th year if that's in the IEP. Now the accommodations guidelines, we utilize the PSSA Keystones accommodation guidelines, and those can be found on our website. If you look under the programs on the left-hand side of the page, I'll just try to give you a short reference here. Policies and procedures, programs O to R, Pennsylvania System of School Assessment, PSSA, then testing, accommodations, and security. And you'll find the PDFs of the accommodations guidelines there for both general accommodations and the guidelines for English language learners, because that has come up also. So you can find a couple of tools on our website that will help with the accommodations question. Okay, now the last thing I just wanted to mention was that we've been really trying to review our programs in light of the requirements I mentioned at the beginning of my segment about the requirement to test competencies of all students. And as most of you know, if we only have a couple of programs in a particular zip code, it's difficult to develop a reliable assessment because we have so few people to review and develop the test. So we've been scaling back on new program approvals for those SIPs with test waivers. So I don't know if everybody's aware of that, but that's been an initiative recently to make sure that all our programs are, at least the new programs being approved, have adequate assessment provisions. And I'm not going to go into the new program of study assessments. I think Patty and Lori are probably going to cover those in quite a bit of detail. So those are the materials I wanted to cover and just give you a regulatory framework for the PDE guidance on occupational testing in Pennsylvania. Lori?
Great. Thank you very much, Kevin. So everybody knows we'll have an outline of all this information that Kevin has provided to you on our website at careertechpa.org so that you can have more of the information in writing that he spoke about. And also, if you have any individual questions, like he said earlier, to please email him, and he can answer those individually one-on-one with specific instances at your school. Thank you, Kevin. Again, thank you all for attending today. I'm going to be discussing the Pennsylvania requirements. We'll go over the testing timeline for you. We'll talk about updates and changes for this year. I'd like to touch on programs of study and explain that process a little bit to you. We'll talk about test security, and if time permits, we can answer some questions over the air. So the Pennsylvania requirements, these are all outlined in the Guide to Student Occupational Competency Testing. This is a guidebook that is provided to all the schools to assist them with the testing. It talks about and goes over the testing of all secondary concentrators, which Kevin just spoke about the definition of that. So you can reference this manual with questions regarding that, and also addresses the federal and state requirements for testing. It talks about NOCD and NIMS as the two testing agencies that we use to assess. It talks in depth of each process for those, goes over the costs that PDE assumes, and any requirements. If you're a new testing coordinator out there, I urge you to maybe print a copy of this off. It's available on our website, and review it. Very useful tool for all the requirements. To discuss the timeline a little bit, testing occurs in the spring from March to May for post-testing. If you are a semester about school, you will test at the end of the semester for those students. Before testing, we'd like to review all the materials for the current year, including the guidebook, which I just talked about. And all of this is available on our website right here at www.careertechpa.org. I'll take you out there now and show you a little bit about it. This is our main web page, and you will click on Student Testing, and you will see a bunch of PDF files that we've tried to organize for you in an organized fashion to help you understand everything. Right here in the first paragraph, you'll see the guidebook, which I was referring to, and it's also the very first PDF under Student or Testing Overview and Requirements. Under this section, we also have a couple files that we update every year for you, including contact information. That's contact information for Kevin in his office, our office here at Penn State, NOCD's office, and NIMS as well. So anytime you have questions throughout the process, you'll have phone numbers and emails for anybody and everybody you need to talk to. There's the testing timeline checkoff form, which I'm going over right now, the timeline, and you can use this as a checkoff form for yourself to make sure that you've completed everything that needs to be done. Easy flow chart for you to use. That's a one-page flyer you may want to pull off and just hang up that goes along with the timeline. Some information pulled directly out of the guidebook on NIMS testing. So if you are a NIMS school, we've made it into a flyer for you that you can pass out to your instructors or whoever helps out with the NIMS testing. The next section down is your required forms and tools for ordering. So as I'm talking through the PowerPoint and I mention the forms, this is where you will go to retrieve those forms and submit them to Penn State. The tools for ordering helps you obtain the list of approved programs that your school has, and you'll need that list to fill out some of the forms above. And obviously a very important document, your zip code, test number, crosswalk that you want to check each year for any updates. As tests revise, test titles and test numbers update. So you want to make sure that you're ordering the same one. It may not necessarily be the same number as last year if there was a revision. So it's very important that you review that before you begin ordering, even when you're ordering pre-tests. I know we ran into a little bit of that in the fall for those schools that do pre-testing. There's a lot of NOCD resources out there that I'm sure Heidi and Mandy will speak about, and a lot of them are available on client services and right on NOCD's main website, nocd.org. We have a section for cut scores and certificates. You can have a certificate sample. There's PDF files of the 2 brochures we have available to you, the skills certificate brochure and also the PA cut score brochure. Both these brochures are good PR. A lot of schools use the skills certificate brochure to mail out to parents or students to understand a little bit of the process and what the Pennsylvania Skills Certificate is that the students are eligible for when testing. The PA Cut Score brochure is a newer brochure that describes the process for determining cut scores. And we like to use this when we recruit people to help us determine the cut scores, to get the subject matter experts that we need to complete the work that's done. So those are good to use in recruitment as well. We've added a section for programs of study information. It is a hot topic right now that everybody's trying to understand, so we wanted to give you some information on it since it does affect your test and testing. We have a list of the programs of study and their statuses of where they're at as far as if they're in test alignment, which is the area where it will affect you on the crosswalk. There's a flow chart on the process and a presentation that was done also that goes with the flow chart on the process of programs of study if you're interested. And even though these are available on NOCD's website, we've also included the blueprints. I've added the specific blueprints for the PA customized tests and also then a link directly to NOCD's website with all of their national blueprints. Kevin had mentioned about the accommodations guidelines available on PDE's website. We've also made them available right here on our website to you. So there's the 3 guidebooks that you can use for IEP accommodations. So that is our website. I'll be referring to some of these materials throughout the presentation. And just so you know, this is where the section you will go on our website to find everything you need. I mentioned looking at your approved program list. And you will need to pull this up so you have the SIP code number and the SIP code title of your program when filling out the paperwork for testing. This is a direct link to on PDE's website. I'll bring it up for you so you can see what it looks like. And what you will need to do is select your school. A.W. Beatty's always the lucky one because they're first on the list. You'll choose from the select view. You want to view the approved programs or your PDE 320 for the current year. When you select view, you'll have another little window that pops up right below that generates a report that shows you your SIP code number and your SIP code title at your schools. And these will be what you need to use when you're completing the verification form and looking at the crosswalk determining what assessment you will use that year. Also, before testing, there's a couple forms that need to be submitted to Penn State by February 28th. One is a testing agreement, and that's only if there's been a change in your coordinator or address or email. Any changes made to your records, you will need to fill out a new testing agreement so that our office and NOCTI has your updated information. We do communicate a lot with email, so it's very important we have accurate emails for all of our coordinators. The next required form is the verification form. All schools are required to submit this before February 28th. There's a paper form on our website and also an electronic version of the form. This lets us know which assessments you will be using, which programs you will be testing, and about how many students you will be testing. There's a waiver request form for those programs on the crosswalk that do not have a test that aligns. You will indicate there how many students that affects, and you can submit these forms together. If you do the online version, the electronic version, this form is combined into one form. Also, before testing, you want to actually place your order for your assessments that you need. This is done on NOCTI's Client Services Center. And when you choose Place Order on Client Services Center, I know there's two buttons that pop up there. We had a number of issues last year where schools maybe accidentally clicked the wrong button and just clicked Start Order. You want to make sure that you click on the Start PDE order for this process. That directs the order direct to our office at Penn State so that we can review it, make sure that everything on there being ordered is appropriate, and then we forward on the order to NOCTI for processing. You can print off the blueprints from our website or NOCTI's websites for all the tests that you are ordering and distribute them to your instructors to look at the blueprints and look at them for yourself so that you can prep for the test. And also, you want to encourage your students to do well. We have a lot of useful information from other schools of innovative ideas that they use. And I know we've passed this out a couple times, but I'll show you quickly. We have schools that do pass out I Survived NOCTI t-shirts, just some really neat ideas. A frozen t-shirt contest from Erie County. And we'll have this pass out available on our website so that you can print it off. A breakfast and pizza party for the students. Steel Center does a NOCTI King and Queen contest. A lot of neat ideas, gift cards, pep rallies. Question of the day, similar to an SAT question of the day, you can do a NOCTI question of the day. I know a lot of schools do the awards ceremony. and just some really neat ideas. We'll have, again, this on the website for you to print off. And if you have any ideas that aren't on here, feel free to send them to me so that we can share them with other schools and get students really encouraged to test and to do well. During the testing, it's important that the site coordinators monitor the testing very closely. Make sure that all your processes and procedures are being followed by any staff that's helping, all the proctors and evaluators as well. Definitely ensure security. The Department of Education and NOCTI and us here at Penn State are very adamant about the security and the integrity of the tests. So any security issues that go on, be sure to report those right away to us so that we can fix anything that might be going on. Make sure the appropriate accommodations are in place and set up for your IEP students. Verifying the student data is very important, especially when it comes to the PA secure IDs. Want to make sure that those are properly inputted on the online system accurately. I know Kevin had spoke a little bit about the errors that we had. We had to go back to 86 schools this year to verify PA secure IDs that were coming back incorrect when it was aligned to the PIM system. So make sure that your PA secure IDs are right. Verify them a couple times if you need to. It just saves time in the end so that scores come through properly. And transferring of the performance ratings when you have the evaluators' rating sheets and you're transferring those to the online system. I know that can take quite some time to do. You just want to make sure and go through that they were entered properly. And you can keep those performance rating sheets for your records. You don't need to send those back with the test booklets. Once you receive the scores back from NOCTI, you can double check, make sure everything looks good, and then up to you to dispose of those rating sheets. But definitely hold on to those rating sheets until you receive your scores from NOCTI and are able to verify that there doesn't seem to be any issues that happened in the transferring of those ratings. After testing, scores will need to be released to NOCTI on the Client Services Center for each assessment. Materials will need to be returned to Penn State Greater Allegheny. The deadline is May 15th for that. The materials include the test materials return form, which verifies to us that you're aware you're returning and receipt of returning the materials, that you've used your passcodes for the online portion, and if not, there's an area to put the codes that you did not use. You'll also return the performance booklets, all the used and unused ones, and the evaluator guides. Your scores will be retrieved from the Client Services Center and the PSC reports available to you as well. I believe NOCTI always sends emails out when those PSC reports are available to you, so you should receive those in a timely manner. And then we also at Penn State get a report of how many of your students received the Pennsylvania Skills Certificate and the Certificate of Competency. Once we've verified all your materials have been returned, we automatically forward you out your certificates. If you have awards banquets that you pass these out to or ceremonies, please let us know and send me an email. That way we can make sure that you have these certificates in time for any ceremonies or senior programs that you may have. There's a sample of last year's certificates. They're in the process of approval right now for this year, and then we will have those printed and you can see samples of those ones. Updates and changes this year. Those include the assessments that were revised and released this fall from NOCTI. This is a list of all the new and revised assessments. don't believe there were any new ones. They're all revised, and all of these assessments are going through the process of benchmarking right now to determine a cut score. Cut scores will be released and by the end of March of 2013. Also note the two last ones, retail merchandising and mechanical drafting and design. Those are revised tests and the title revised as well. So it used to be retail trades, it is now called retail merchandising, and what formerly was general drafting is now mechanical drafting. So those are not two new tests, those are just revised tests, and the assessment title was revised as well. We have 5 Pennsylvania customized tests that were also released this year, and this is due to the development of the programs of study for each of these zip codes. So I've added the zip code title here for you, and the title of the test matches the title of the zip code so that it's easy for you to determine whether you will use that assessment or not. Now these will be the only assessments available for those zip codes. When the program of study is reviewed and updated, the test also goes through a process to make sure that it still aligns. So this will be the test for each program of study. So to talk a little bit about programs of study, I just want to touch base on a couple things. There are 42 current programs of study that are created or in process by the Department of Education. This website right here on Department of Education will take you directly to the information for programs of study. This link is also on our website at careertechpa.org. So if you can't quite write it down fast enough, we'll have this PowerPoint and this website available on our website. So let me take you out to PDE's website right now and show you a couple things that are available to you on programs of study for this. The top information is all the information directly about programs of study if you'd like to read more information about that. But if you scroll down to the bottom is where you will see the program titles and the zip codes. And when you click on the actual title, a PDF will open up that will explain to you exactly what that zip code is. And give specific information about that program of study. Also includes the zip code title, the zip code description, so there's one of these for every program of study developed, and it includes the information about the assessment. If you click on the zip code number to the right, it will pull up the list of zip codes that are in the state, where you can get the zip code description. You can search for a specific zip code. And you can get the information of it, the description. Next to that is the task lists that are used for the programs of study, and this task list is what is used to align the assessment and create the assessment. You can pull those up in an Excel file or a PDF file, and it has all of the tasks that are listed in that program of study. It's your course outline for your instructors and your framework. And this is used by instructors as a check-off list to make sure that they include each of these tasks in their program. Once this task list is developed is when we take the current NOCD and it goes through an alignment process to determine if the current test used is aligned or not. If it's not aligned is when we get into customizing the test. And that's where we are now starting to release those customized tests as they are developed and go through a pilot phase. And once the pilot phase goes through, then we can release the test for use. We have 5 this year, and I believe we released 2 last year. To the right of those task lists, you have the secondary school partnership, which I think is might be a very useful tool to the coordinators out there. When you click on this list, it gives you all the other programs across the state for that program, such as carpentry. It gives you all the schools that have that program. I know I get a lot of questions out from the field of what other schools might have my program. Right here you can find that out, and I can always give you the contact information for the coordinator for that school so that you can get in touch with them. So that's the Program of Study website. Hopefully you can find some useful tools for your purposes on there. That would be great. We also have a list on our website of the programs of study and where they are in their alignment process. I took you there once, but let me pull up the one file under programs of study. We have this list and the status and the aligned test with it. So if you look at carpentry, which is the 3rd one down, carpentry has gone through the process. The program of study is complete, and the approved test is the NOCD National Carpentry Test. When it went through the alignment went very well, and that test goes along with the program description and task lists that have been determined for the program of study. So there's been quite a few that have gone through alignment where the NOCD National Test has aligned, and you can also see where a Pennsylvania customized test has been developed. So you may want to pull this off and look at your programs and see if it is a program of study, where it falls in the current process. All 42 are listed on here. And again, that's on our website under Student Testing in this Programs of Study section. Currently, we have 14 programs of customized tests developed for Pennsylvania. 7 are currently released right now. The automotive, mechanics, and the commercial and advertising art were released last year for Pennsylvania, and we have 5 released for this year. So we have 7 that are in actual use right now, and we have 7 that are in pilot phase right now. So the test has been developed, and NOCD pilots these assessments for us. I know a lot of your schools do pilot testing, and it's very important if you have these tests to, to help in the pilot process as well. NOCTI's requirements are 200 students. They need 200 students to pilot test in order for them to determine whether the test is valid. And when you have a program that only has, 6 or 7 or 8 programs across the state, it's hard to get those 200 students. Some of these programs of study right here in this 7 are going into their second phase of piloting, their second year of piloting, because last year there wasn't enough students to determine. Hopefully they'll go through this year and we will be able to release them next year. But it's very important for your schools to participate in this so that we can get the programs of study finalized and get the customized tests out and ready for use for you. So that's a list of the ones that will be piloted this year. I believe the information for piloting this year will be coming out soon. There's a separate order form for that. And if you need more information on piloting or these test specific, please let me know and I can direct you to the right information. All the PA customized tests have specific blueprints created for them and study guides, pre-tests for those schools that pre-tests. There's teacher prep packs and a cut score that's developed all specifically for these tests. And again, the programs of study are on a 3-year revision cycle. So as the program of study and the task lists are reviewed to make sure they are still valid and current, then we also assess the test that is aligned to it as well, whether that be a NOCTI national test or a PA customized test. The blueprints again are available on our websites. The study guides are created as soon as the customized test is developed. And again, we go through the same cut score process that we do for all the national tests, we also do for the PA customized tests. Again, test security is very important. Instructors are not permitted to be testing coordinators or proctors or evaluators. We've still had instances this past year where site coordinators were the instructor. I know staff and personnel is tight sometimes, but we need to be very sure that instructors are not part of the process. They cannot view assessments, they cannot view the tests, the jobs related to any of the tests, or asking students questions about the tests. It's important that they do not have access to client services either. And reproduction of test materials is absolutely prohibited by NOCTI's test security policies. Instructors can look at the instructor prep packs. They can review the blueprints for the tests, including the Pennsylvania customized tests. The study guide materials are developed to help them and the students prepare for the testing. And they can help the students prepare for the test as well. The site coordinators and the schools are responsible to adhere to all the policies that are outlined by the testing agency and PDE. Any breach in security will be evaluated by NOCTI, and schools could be liable for funds up to $20,000 if the test is compromised. So it's very important that we follow the guidelines for test security and make sure that instructors aren't involved in any processes that they should not be. And if there is any issues, that they are reported immediately to PDE and to the testing agencies. So I'd like to thank you for listening to my presentation. I'm going to see if there's any questions out there that I might be able to answer while we're kind of switching between me and Heidi. And Kevin, I have a question for you. So if we can unmute your mic. The question is, when you mention the 13th year, are you suggesting to hold a student back for a whole extra year to allow completion, or are you suggesting that we offer the test to students after they have graduated?
It's my understanding that the 13th year is used as an extra year for accommodation purposes to extend the educational timeline out 1 year. And so testing would occur in that 13th year that would also be, in essence, the end of the program. So we'd still be doing end of program testing when the students anticipated to graduate, but the 13th year would be utilized as an extra year of the program as well as the testing. It wouldn't just be used for testing purposes.
Thank you, Kevin. I have a question. Has this website replaced the nocti.org site for PA people? No, this has not replaced nocti.org. This is Penn State's website. Both websites are applicable to testing in Pennsylvania. However, the information on the careertechpa.org website supersedes the information on NOCTI's website. Not all the information on NOCTI's website applies specifically to Pennsylvania, so any of the specific Pennsylvania requirements you will need to look at our website. Next question is, when will the 2012-13 cut scores be available? They will be available by March, and they will be available on our website at careertechpa.org. And I will also send out an email to all the coordinators and directors when they are released. Are there plans to allow for a later testing window and return materials window? Since we don't end school until at least June 4th, without snow days, students are missing valuable knowledge. They are still learning up to the time for the test. For this year, we will stay with the calendar that we have used in the past. It is necessary for us to build time into the calendar so that we receive all the materials back from the schools before coordinators leave for the summer. Please email me if this is an issue for you. We will take the information in considering when determining the calendar for next year. Question, would it be possible to supply us with a list of testing coordinators? And yes, we can do that. I can add that information to the list on our website so that you guys can definitely contact each other. And Heidi, I do have a question for you. You may be talking about this during your portion of the webinar, and the question is, can students have extended time on the performance portion of the NOCTI test if it is written into the IEP?
And the answer to that would be yes. If a student's IEP calls for extended time or a reader or any other accommodations, they should be made for both the multiple choice and the performance portions.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, I believe that's all the questions we have right now. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Heidi Spees and Mandy McCall at NOCTI.
Good morning, everyone. Mandy and I will be tag teaming this morning. This is Heidi. So I'm going to go ahead and get started, and then partway through I'm going to turn over to Mandy, and then I believe there is time built in at the end for some questions. So we'll go ahead and get started. We are going to talk a little bit this morning about the roles and responsibilities of the various individuals involved with the testing program. We have a website and client services center updates and overview, and then some basic updates and reminders that will hopefully help you as you plan for test administration, and then also information about the scoring data and reports that are available to you once testing is completed. Last year, when we were out for the on-site workshop, we came back with a big to-do list of requests which was great, and so we wanted to let you know that we heard you. And you can see some of the requests here and that they've been taken care of. The big one that we want to make sure that everyone is aware of is that the data upload tool is free and available this year for all schools participating in the Student Occupational Testing Program. PDE built the tool right into their budget this year for testing, and so you will find the data upload tool at your Client Services Center, and we have a little bit more information about that later in the presentation. You also requested that adding extended time be easier, and so we've made some modifications to the Client Services Center that allow you to add extended time to individual user codes yourself. And you can also add text-to-speech as well to individual user codes. So those are two new features for you. Also with text-to-speech, the request was made that any text-to-speech assessments stay in the same batch. And if you remember, up until this year, if you order text-to-speech for some assessments, you'll have two different batches at your Client Services Center, one that will have all of your text-to-speech enabled user codes and one without. If you continue to order text-to-speech during the order process, that will stay the same. However, if you choose to add text-to-speech after your user codes have been issued rather than have us do it during the order process, all of your user codes will stay in the same batch, and you can just add text-to-speech for each user code as needed. We also have added the text-to-speech icon to the printed user code list and also to labels for those of you that use labels, so that will be easily identified. We have added individual student reports to the TaskLink report. For those of you that have used TaskLink reports in the past, you'll remember from last year that you received a TaskLink report that had all of the students on one group report, and we still offer that format. But then additionally, there is an individual TaskLink report for each student. And someone had asked last year, when you're saving your score reports, we had just a generic file name that popped in automatically when saving, and so we've changed that this year so that now the actual test title is part of that file name when you're saving score reports, so that hopefully that will be a little bit of a time saver for you. And then we did create Pennsylvania-specific state averages based on the norms that ruled in July, the state averages, and those are posted on NACHI's website on the Pennsylvania page. So we did hear you and wanted to make sure that you are aware of those changes that are new for this year. Real briefly, just talking a bit about the site coordinator role, and Lori mentioned a testing agreement. If the site coordinator at your school has changed, you will need to complete a new testing agreement. They are available on our website in the Getting Started section, and you will need to send that to Penn State Greater Allegheny so that they can capture that change as well and make sure that they're able to connect with the new site coordinator. And then they'll forward the testing agreement on to NACHI so that we can update the account for your school. You'll want to, and Lori talked a little bit about this as well, you'll want to make sure that you think about your test dates and think about when you need your score reports and when you need those PSC certificates or the certificate of competencies, and then kind of work backward from there to make sure that your testing is completed in enough time so that you have those reports and certificates when needed. Someone had asked a question about accommodations, so make sure that you are aware of the accommodations needed for the students that will be testing, whether that be a reader or text-to-speech or extended time or some other accommodation that's required in their IEP. You'll want to make sure that you have your proctors and evaluators selected in enough time so that you can adequately prepare them and train them. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. And you'll also want to determine if you're going to be testing in sessions. Most of you are aware, I'm sure there are some new coordinators that are not, that you can administer NACHI assessments in up to 3 sessions, which works very well for working with class schedules and also for handling test fatigue. It's tough for students to sit in front of a computer for 3 straight hours while taking the multiple choice assessment. So you could break that multiple choice test up into 2 90-minute sessions and test over 2 days, or 3 60-minute sessions and test over 3 days. And you can use the same option when you're administering the performance test, which I know gets a little bit trickier with evaluators, but you could administer portions of the test in up to 3 different sessions. So you could do jobs 1 and 2 on day 1, jobs 2 and 3 on day 2, and 3 and 4, 4 and 5 on day 3, depending on the number of jobs in the test that's being administered. The other thing that you want to think about is how you're going to handle students that are absent on test day. For the multiple choice assessments, the user codes, oh, we're getting a threat from our antivirus. Hang on one second. Sorry about that. Anyway, as I was saying, you'll want to make sure that you have a plan in place for handling absent students. And so the user codes for the multiple choice tests are set out far enough that you should be able to schedule a makeup day if needed. One thing that I want to make sure that you're all aware of, and many of you have already taken care of this, we do have a process for you to add a co-coordinator. So if there is someone that assists you with entering student names and PA secure IDs, or placing orders, or pulling down score reports, and obviously that person can't be a teacher, but another non-teaching staff person, you can add them as a co-coordinator to your account. And what that does is allows them, when they call in, if they have questions for NOCTI, we'll be able to look on your account and know that they're authorized to receive account information from us. That form is available at your Client Services Center in the Resources section. So if there is someone that helps you, I would encourage you to add them as a co-coordinator, and that way we'll be aware that, that they are assisting you, and we would be able to answer any questions if they call or email. Lori talked a little bit about the teacher's role, and I just want to follow up with that. She had mentioned, obviously, where to find a crosswalk, and so I would encourage your teachers to do a crosswalk of the test blueprint for the assessment that they'll be administering and their program content, just so that they're clear on what the test is going to be covering, and do they cover that in their curriculum, and where in their curriculum is that particular topic covered. Obviously, they'll assist students with test preparation, and some of the ways that they can do that would be to review the blueprints with the students so the students can see all of the tasks that the questions will be measuring, and also to review the pretest results with the students and explain to them, what that pretest data is used for in helping to pinpoint where the students may be struggling a bit and may need to remediate before post-testing. If your school has ordered study guides, obviously they will incorporate the study guides as well throughout the year or whenever they determine that they want to use the study guides. One thing to keep in mind, and this is a little bit different than our security policy, which states that teachers cannot proctor tests for their own students. Teachers can proctor the study guide sample questions. You receive access to an online sample test that has about 35 questions for each study guide that you receive, and teachers can proctor those, which is great. It allows the teachers to see what the online testing system looks like. They can go over those questions with their kids. So just make sure that you're aware that teachers can proctor those study guide questions. And then obviously your teachers are going to assist with some decisions and logistics, such as assisting with selecting evaluators, making sure that the tools and materials needed are set and ready to go, making sure that the shops and labs are ready to go for performance testing. And then obviously they'll review their score report data at the end and use that data to make improvements to their program. The teacher's role in performance testing, you want to make sure that teachers are able to review the instructor prep packs. And for those of you who are not familiar with instructor prep packs, if you're a new coordinator, instructor prep packs are available at the Client Services Center, but then we have created a teacher access for them as well, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But basically, instructor prep packs provide the teachers with all of the information that they need about performance testing, the tools and materials that they'll need to have on hand for each job, gives them information about getting their shop or lab set up, and provides them just a lot of good information about NOCTI testing in general. So those are a great resource for your teachers. I mentioned that a lot of times teachers assist with evaluator selection, and then they use those prep packs to ensure that the shop and lab are set up correctly, that everything is in proper working order, and then again they'll review those performance test scores and use that data for program improvement. Your multiple choice test proctors have some things that you need to share with them as well. We would encourage you to provide them with a copy of the proctor guide that's available at the Client Services Center prior to testing so that they have an opportunity to read through that guide and become familiar with what they're going to need to do on the day of testing, and also so that if they have any questions, they can make sure that those are answered prior to test administration. They need to be familiar with the district test policies, such as what happens with students that complete early, that kind of thing. They will distribute the test materials, so they'll be distributing the user codes and passwords as students enter the room for online testing. In the proctor guide is a scripted set of instructions that they will read to the participants to help them get logged in and start their test. They need to make sure that they maintain security, and this is very important. You should be encouraging your proctors to be alert, to walk around the room, to be really monitoring students. Not in Pennsylvania did this happen, but we did have a school where a student had their phone in the testing session and were taking pictures of the online test questions, which obviously resulted in a pretty significant security breach. So just make sure that your proctors are aware and alert and are monitoring students as the testing session is going on. And then they're going to collect all of the test materials at the end of the session. They complete any forms. There's an irregularity form in the proctor guide, and there's also a comment sheet. So if they have anything that they want to make sure that you as the site coordinator is aware of, something that happened or a suggestion that they may have, they can use those comment sheets to get that information back to you and or Penn State or here at NOCTI. Your performance test evaluators also have some responsibilities on the day of testing. There is a generic evaluator guide on the Client Services Center that provides a general overview of the evaluator responsibilities and instructions, and you can share that with your evaluators ahead of time. But you're going to want to make sure that you do some training for them, and we'll talk about that in a minute. They should be able to have an opportunity to become familiar with the shop or lab so they're comfortable on the day of testing. They will distribute the test materials to the students. They will have a performance test booklet for each student that they'll distribute, and then they will also have an evaluator guide. They're going to review the procedures and instructions with the student. Again, those are scripted and included in the evaluator guide. They'll be maintaining security and also safety. So they're going to want to maintain a safe environment for students as they're completing those performance jobs. And then they're going to evaluate the student performance using the criteria outlined in the evaluator guide. Again, as with multiple choice testing, they'll collect materials after the test session is completed and complete those forms if they have any comments or feedback that they would like to provide. I've mentioned that training your proctors and evaluators is very important, especially the evaluators, so that they have an opportunity, because these are third-party individuals that are not teachers, they're not associated with your school, and so you need to make sure that they're comfortable with what they're going to be doing on the day of testing. So we encourage you to bring them in for a training prior to test administration and just go over some things with them. Make sure that they are aware that they can't share test content or discuss the test with the teacher. You need to make them aware of any procedures that your school has, such as how to handle students needing a restroom break, what to do if there's an emergency, such as a fire drill, or any other disruptions, maybe the power goes out, who knows what may happen, just so that if those emergencies occur, that they know what they're supposed to be doing with the students and how to handle that. You want to make sure that they have a tour of the shop or lab so they're familiar with the layout, where everything is going to be, how the jobs will be set up. And you also want to share the evaluator guide which is shipped with your test material shipment, that has to stay at the school, cannot leave the school, actually cannot leave you as a site coordinator, need to keep that with you and be reviewing that with the evaluator. And that's really important. It will let the evaluator have an opportunity to see what the jobs are that they'll be evaluating, what the participant instructions are, what their instructions as the evaluator are, and also what the scoring criteria is going to look like. That way, when they come to the day of testing, they're going to be clear on what they need to do, what the students need to do, and they will have had an opportunity ahead of time to ask any questions that they may have. We have materials available to assist you with this process. We have some PowerPoint training slides for both the proctors and the evaluators. I mentioned the guides that are available on the Client Services Center, and then there's also a certificate of appreciation that you can use for your evaluators if you choose. We have several updates, new things that we want to make you aware of, and some important reminders as well. Most of you are aware that NACHD has countdown kits available, so we just want to put this slide up for any new site coordinators that may not be aware of countdown kits. They're available for all NACHD job ready assessments, and there's a lot of information on NACHD's website in the products and services section if you're interested in learning more about countdown kits. We've talked a lot about study guides. Lori mentioned them. I mentioned them. Most of you are aware of study guides, and a lot of you have been using those in your schools. There is, again, more information on NACHD's website, including a sample. So you can print that sample and share that with the teachers. You can share it with advisory committee members. You could send it home to share with parents if you'd like to keep them informed on how you're prepping your students for test administration. So again, quite a bit more information available on NACHD's website about study guides. Some quick security reminders. Lori had some as well, so we'll just talk about these briefly. It's important to make sure that your performance evaluators are not instructors, even from another school. So it would not be acceptable for a carpentry teacher from your school to swap with a carpentry teacher from another school and evaluate each other's students. Performance evaluators have to be third-party individuals that are not associated with the school, from business and industry. Lots of times they are your advisory committee members, and in some cases they can be school personnel that are not associated with the classroom. Those examples would be if your district at the district office has an accountant. That person could serve as the performance evaluator for an accounting assessment. If your district has a mechanic that takes care of all of your buses and other transportation needs, that person could possibly serve as an evaluator for some of the auto-related assessments. If your district has a school nurse, that person could possibly serve as an evaluator for some of the healthcare-related assessments. But you just need to make sure that if you go that route, whomever you choose is far removed from the classroom, and really the best option is bringing in third-party personnel that are not associated with the school. Lori mentioned, and I really want to follow up on this because this continues to be not a big issue, but it crops up every year. Making copies of test booklets and evaluator guides is strictly prohibited. If something comes up on the day of testing where you don't have enough booklets or evaluator guides, you need to call our office and discuss that situation with us. It's really important that when you receive your shipment, especially for the performance test, that you make sure that you've received the test booklet number that you've ordered and the number of evaluator guides that you need, so that if there are any discrepancies, we can take care of those ahead of time and so that copies are not made. Also, make sure that you remember that performance ratings need to be entered by you, the site coordinator, or an appropriate designee. I mentioned that co-coordinator option, so maybe you have someone that assists you with that process. Making sure that performance ratings are not entered by the teachers. Also, that teachers cannot be in possession of test materials, which you should all be aware of, and that is including your evaluator guides, and that those cannot leave the school. As I mentioned during training, you would not be able to send evaluator guides with the evaluator so that they could look them over on their own time. Those have to stay at the school. And I talked about the proctors being vigilant in the situation with the taking pictures of the cell phone. And again, most of you are aware that teachers cannot serve as a site coordinator or have access to the Client Services Center. So just kind of those are the most common security things that we run across. So I wanted to point those out so as you're planning, you can make sure that you avoid those, and that would be much appreciated. We talked a little bit last year, and I wanted to talk about it again this year. We encourage you, if you have not done so already, to implement a checkout, check-in process for the day of testing. It would be very helpful for you. It would help with security and help to protect the integrity of the testing program at your school for you to have this process in place, where proctors and evaluators check out the materials prior to testing from a specific individual, typically at the office from either you or someone who's assisting you with testing. And then when testing has been completed, that those materials are checked back in and that someone is verifying that everything that went out prior to testing has come back in after the testing session has been completed. We have information and a checkout, check-in form available at the Client Services Center that you can use. And it basically just verifies, you can see on the screen here, that the proctor evaluator is checking out particular materials. They sign them out. Someone in the office verifies that, and then they're checked back in upon return. So if you have not implemented this process, we strongly encourage you to do so for this year. Order reminders. Lori talked about the 2 buttons, and she had a big red X through the start order, which I did not do, but wanted to provide you some information about ordering. Make sure that you, when you're figuring out the NACD timelines for ordering, that you add 3 days to your order, because that order routes through Penn State. They need to have time to review and approve your order and forward it on to NACD. So make sure that you add a couple of days for them to complete that process. And new this year, if your school orders extra evaluator guides for any reason, you're aware that you're invoiced for those, and that hasn't changed. And also, if a rush order is needed, again, that has not changed, where schools are invoiced for rush order fees. But what has changed is that you need to provide us with a purchase order number or a credit card for those additional charges that are not paid for through Penn State and PDE. And so that's new this year. Just wanted to make you aware of that ahead of time as you're planning. We do have a pre-order planning worksheet. This is available at the Client Services Center and is also available in the Teacher Resources section of our website. So you could use this worksheet and hand it out to maybe students that are going to be needing accommodation, that type of thing. So wanted to make you aware that there is a pre-order planning worksheet available. If that would be useful for you, you certainly can print that from either of the sites listed on the screen. And pilot testing was mentioned. Lori talked about that briefly, the Pennsylvania customized tests that have yet to be piloted. We are planning to have all of the titles for our NACD assessments as well as blueprints and titles for the Pennsylvania assessments on our website in January. And so when you're at NACD's homepage, if you click into the assessment and development section, you'll find a link for pilot testing. And you can also find that from the blueprints page. We'll put it in a couple spots so that they're easy to find. But you'll be able to see the titles that will be piloted and also pull down blueprints of those assessments. And again, as in previous years, TACTA will be coordinating pilot testing. And so watch for order forms and information to be coming to you from TACTA. I'm thinking that they're going to have that information to you before the holiday break. So watch for that. If you have any questions about pilot testing, you can contact our office. And we'd be happy to talk with you. This, our presentation will be posted on PA's website. This is an online testing scenario that I wanted to share with you. This works really well. If your school prints user codes in the label format, that's fantastic. It's perfect, works really well. If you don't, I would encourage you to do that. You don't have to print them to a label. You can use some thicker paper or cardstock, but that provides every student with about a 3x5 size card that has their user code and their password and their name. And so as the students are entering the room, proctors can be handing the student, checking them in, and handing them their login credentials. It's really helpful if all of the computers are set to the NOCTI test site before students enter the room. So they come in, they sign in, they're provided their user code and password, they sit down at the computer, the NOCTI testing site is up and they're ready to go, and then that proctor can use the script provided in the proctor guide and read the instructions to help the students log in for their assessment. And then they can instruct the students, once they're logged in, to place their card that has their user code and password on the corner of their desk, and the proctors can come around and collect those, especially if you're testing in multiple sessions. That same user code and password will be used for the multiple sessions. So day 2 and day 3, if you're doing 3 sessions, you're going to need to have those cards to pass out again when the students come back for the additional sessions. So just a scenario that we wanted to share. We've had a lot of feedback about this scenario, and it seems to work really well, so I wanted to make you aware of that, especially for you new coordinators. And again, if you have questions, certainly call the office and we'd be happy to talk with you. Performance rating entry options. Most of you that have been coordinators are aware of entering performance ratings from the Client Services Center. We wanted to make you aware that you can also enter your ratings from the online testing system. This is especially useful if there are a couple of you entering ratings, so maybe you have 2 or 3 people that are assisting with that process. Someone could be logged in through the Client Services Center, but then you can have additional people, if there's someone that's eligible to have access to that, like that co-coordinator that could enter their ratings through the online testing system. Our video contest is underway. We had some submissions last year from Pennsylvania schools, and you can see that our second place winner last year was Indiana County, and our honorable mention was Berks, the West Campus. Their videos are actually on NOCTI's website. They were great. So the contest is going on again. There's information and the entry forms available at NOCTI's website. It's fun. There are prizes. So if any of your programs are interested, I would certainly encourage them to participate. We've had calls already, so this isn't going to come as a surprise to many of you other than the questions that you may have. NOCTI collaborated with the National Program for Non-Collegiate Sponsored Instructions, which National CCRS for their acronym, to have 25 of our assessments evaluated and recommended for college credit. They have over 1,500 colleges and universities in their network that have indicated a willingness to consider awarding credit based on that national CCRS credit recommendation. We have additional titles that are under review. We started with 25 just to get the ball rolling and see how the process is going to work and how it was received. We've had a lot of good feedback, and so we're exploring additional titles to run through this program. There is information on our website. There is a link to the NCCRS website that provides you with the list of titles, the credit recommendation, a list of those 1,500 colleges and universities. So if you're interested in learning more about that, I would encourage you to visit our website. Students that score at a 70% on just the multiple choice portion, the performance portion is not applicable. Don't need to worry about that, even though you do for your testing program. For the college credit program, just the multiple choice assessment is considered. So students need to score at least a 70% on one of the approved titles. They receive a college credit recommendation report. That report is automatically generated with your NOCTI score reports. So for any students that scored at that 70% or higher, when you go to pull your score reports, you're going to see this college credit recommendation report for eligible students right at your Client Services Center. And so then they can work with the participating college or university or even take that report to maybe a college or university that is not on the list but would be willing to award credit. So something new and exciting. We're very excited about this process, and like I said, we're looking at additional titles that we're considering. And now I'm going to turn it over to Mandy, and she has some website updates and additional information for you.
Good morning, everyone. I know you all are probably familiar with our website by now. If you're not, take a good look at it. It's great, valuable information. I did want to mention that our website is constantly updating, being changed, modified, so it's good to check back even if you are really familiar with it. And I also wanted to give you a visual of some of the pages we've been talking about. From the main page, you can get directly to the assessment blueprints, so that's very handy. The development and revision section is listed here, and then to get to the Pennsylvania State page, you can just click on the state's link. From the Pennsylvania page, you'll be able to get to the Pennsylvania Customized Assessment Blueprints. You'll also find the new state averages reports for the secondary and post-secondary levels. And that is a feature that was requested from the last year's training. So if you haven't seen that on the website, go ahead and take a look. The development and revision page is where you'll go to find information about NACD's test development process and the pilot testing that Heidi talked about previously. There's also a list of our new and revised assessments, and also the assessments currently in development and or revision stages. You'll want to direct your teachers to the Teacher Corner to learn valuable information regarding their role in testing. There's tools and resources provided to help them prepare for NACD testing. They can also sign up for teacher updates, and this will allow them to receive teacher-specific updates from NACD. You should also provide the teachers with the teacher resources password that is found in the resources section of your Client Services Center. From this restricted section, they will be able to print the instructor prep packs that will assist them with the multiple choice and performance testing. Teachers will also have access to performance test information for students, a score interpretation guide, ideas for using study guides in the classroom. This should save a lot of time since teachers can access the information directly without having you signing in and emailing it to them. They can just go right up there, print out their instructor prep packs. We've also made a few updates to the Client Services Center based on the feedback from last year. You'll see a list of these updates from the home page. You'll want to view the office closures by clicking on the little calendar. Please remember that your teachers are not allowed to access this site. And I know everyone is really excited about this addition for this year. The data upload tool is available for all schools participating in the TAP and Student Occupational Competency Testing Program for free. The data upload tool is beneficial for assigning user codes to test takers quickly and easily. It will ensure the accuracy of participant information for reporting and will also help with that PSC or the PA Secure ID issue that Lori had talked about. You'll want to make sure to review the data upload instructions located in the Before Testing section of the Client Services Center before attempting to upload test taker information. This is what the data upload workspace will look like. Your data will need to be entered or imported into the data file template found on this page. And we are always available for help with this. With anything new, there's always questions, issues, anybody should be able to help you with this. Hopefully we can get the bugs worked out this year, and then next year it'll just be smooth sailing. Of course, you always have the option to assign the user codes manually like before, but the good news is this is easier as well this year. You'll be able to assign user codes to test takers by tabbing through the fields and then clicking the Save Changes button. Remember that the PA Secure ID must be used for all test takers. Once you have the user codes assigned, you'll want to print out the list or the labels that Heidi talked about. And you will see on this little screenshot that the text-to-speech icon is displayed. Another feature we are excited to announce, and Heidi talked about this a little bit, and I'm going to show you the screens for that, is the ability to add extended time, to add sessions, and to change a user code to text-to-speech after your user codes have been processed. To do this, you'll select the user code, the underlined link, and then you will get this screen. Once the user code is selected, you'll be able to make your changes. The name and participant ID will be displayed, so you'll want to make sure you have the correct participant. If you have a large number of students requiring text-to-speech, you can still indicate that at the time your order is placed. That way you don't have to do that for a whole bunch of students. But remember, if you want your text-to-speech user codes to be included in the same batch, that must be done after the order is processed from this page. It's the same thing for adding the extended time. If you have a lot of user codes requiring that, you can still request that like you normally did, because doing that for each user code might be a little cumbersome as well. And you can do that by faxing in a list, you can give us a call, or you can email it to anybody here at NOCTI. And finally, the last exciting news is the addition of the TaskLink reports. And those are going to be provided for all job-ready tests at no extra charge. I'll go over the TaskLink reports later in the presentation. You will be able to view or download the group and individual reports from the standard reports section of the Client Services Center. But any TaskLink reports for customized assessments will need to be requested from NOCTI, but these will still be provided on the Client Services Center for free. We just need to know what tests you would like those for. Score reports for all online tests will be processed within 2 business days, and you will get an email notification that those are ready and posted to the Client Services Center. Reports will be available to export in Excel or saved as a PDF file, and you will notice that the test code has been added to the file name, so you don't have to change that every time you go to save a file. Score reports will remain in your Client Services Center for 1 year, but if you would like to view previous year's standard score reports, not the Pennsylvania customized, you can select the Archive Report button. You'll definitely want to save your PSC reports. The group score report is a summary of the assessment results for all participants within a particular testing group. Participants are listed alphabetically with individual scores displayed for each duty area or performance job and the total score. Group averages can be used to identify strengths and gap areas in the program. The second page of your standard score report will be the analysis of scores. These provide comparative data for group, including site, state, and nation. Each student will also be, you can provide each student with an individual score report. It includes the sub-scores by duty, as well as a total score and comparative data. This report can be used to identify individual strengths and gap areas, as well as serve as a valuable component of a student's portfolio. Okay, and then going over the task links, NACD's task link reports provide detailed information for an individual task taker, their performance for the various tasks within a major content area. It provides the number of items presented for each task and the number for each task taker. You can find, it's kind of nice to have a blueprint for the test that you're looking at the task link report, and then you can compare what tasks and duties that they have listed. Instructors can easily identify strengths and areas for improvement by task for each student and for the entire class. And then you'll also be provided with the Pennsylvania Custom Reports. This includes the PSC report, and it provides the PA skills level achieved for each student. Individual reports for each student provide scores and the PA skill level achieved. And you will find the PA customized reports in the Custom Report section of the Client Services Center. The PSC report will be available from April to September for the current school year. For those of you that test early, you'll want to make sure to come back to the Client Services Center in April to view the PA report after the benchmarks have been established. And since the PSC reports are not archived, you must export and save from the Client Services Center. To do that, once you've selected the PSC report from the Client Services Center, you will enter a date range and then click Retrieve Test Titles. Select the individual test title or select all option, and then you can export these to PDF or Excel format. All test titles can be exported into one Excel file for easy viewing, but each test title will be exported into a separate worksheet, as you can see listed on the bottom. The PA individual report is similar to the NACD individual score report, but includes the PA skills level achieved and is available for all test titles. And remember, these are not archived and must be saved each year. All right, I think that concludes our little presentation. We're going to send it back over to Lori for questions.
Okay. Thank you, Mandy. We do have a few questions
You're
here
welcome.
we're going to go through. Heidi, we have a question. We used the labels for pre-testing and they worked very well. So can we use the same labels for post-testing?
When schools place their order for post-test, they will be issued new user codes. So the user codes and passwords used for pre-testing are for that pre-test only, and you'll receive new user codes and passwords for your post-test.
Okay. And where is the co-coordinator form found?
That is found at the Client Services Center. If you click into Locate Resources and then get into the Student Resource section, there are all kinds of forms and guides, but it's right there, and it's called the Co-Coordinator Request Form.
Screens. Switch screens. A question about the college credits with NOCTI scores. Automotive Technician Core, PA now has a customized test. Does that mean that the students do not have the option for those credits because of the PA customized test?
The only assessments that are available for credit are those 25 listed so far. We are exploring other options, which may include options to include some of those PA tests for review. It's a brand new initiative, so stay tuned for more information. But currently, and I know there are a couple where this has taken place, and one is automotive. If there's a Pennsylvania customized assessment, that test has to be administered, and at this point would not be eligible for the college credit. As I mentioned, there are only 25 NOCTI tests so far that have been run through that process.
Okay, great. Will heavy equipment study guides be available before spring 2013 testing?
That, I'm not sure who asked that question, but whoever that is out there, site coordinator, send me an email. We've been in talks, Lori, with your office about developing that heavy equipment and highway construction.
Right.
And I'm not sure at this point that those are going to be available for spring.
For this spring.
Right.
Okay.
May or may not. So there, it's a brand new development.
Yeah, that'll be more of an individual question. They can email us about that. We'll have more information later about that. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Is it possible to have test codes or SIP codes listed with the college credits list?
I believe if they are not there already that we are planning to add that to our NOCTI website. I'll do some double checking on that.
Okay. I have a question on NOCTI pretest dates. Can we have the NOCTI pretest dates by July 1 so we can arrange our schedules accordingly? Those pretest dates for those that test the PA project haven't changed, and the springtime or the fall time, the deadline is October 31st, and for springtime pre-testing is May 15th, the same as post-testing. So those haven't changed. Heidi, do you have anything to add to that?
No, not for students that will be post-testing in the same year, so basically your seniors, you do need to have pre-testing wrapped up by November 30th. If something, and this doesn't happen very often, but, if something were to come up, I know some schools this year were affected by Superstorm Sandy, and so we did grant an extension of a week or so. So if you have an individual scenario that you'd like to discuss with us, you can give a call in the office, into the office and talk with Mandy or myself. And Lori mentioned the spring dates for pre-testing your juniors will correlate with those for your post-test.
Okay, we had a question about the difference between a reader and a text-to-speech. So just to clarify that, I think we have a reader is a person who actually reads the test to the student in an objective manner, and the text-to-speech is where the computer reads to the student. Heidi, did you have anything to add to that?
No, that's correct. And I'm not completely familiar with IEPs, but I know we have run across some situations where schools, the IEP is specific enough that the reader has to be an actual live person reading, and that text-to-speech can't be used. So it really just depends on the individual student's requirements.
Mm-hmm. Okay. A question on IEP. If the IEP states that a student receives extended time on all state and local assessments, that is not enough to cover the accommodations for the NOCTI performance test. And yes, if the extended time is listed as an accommodation on the IEP, then the student can have extended time on the NOCTI performance. Remember, though, that the extended time has to be reasonable in relationship to the work environment. In other words, allowing students to complete the performance test over 5 days would not be reasonable. So it's important that you should work with the student's IEP team to determine what a reasonable extended time is. Heidi, have you had any instances with that or anything to add?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Okay, good. Heidi, can paraeducators proctor the written test?
A parent educator, I'm assuming you're talking about a paraprofessional or a teaching assistant. I'm guessing that's
correct.
What they're referring to. That security requirement for any of your parapros would be the same as a teacher. So a parapro who is primarily assigned to a cosmetology class or the cosmetology program would not be able to proctor those students. The paraprofessionals are pretty involved with the programs and really are considered, instructional staff per se. You could, as we say with the actual teaching staff, teachers cannot proctor students that they teach or that are in a similar program, and it's the same requirement for any paraprofessionals or teaching assistants.
Great. Are countdown kits available for PA-specific tests?
They are not at this point. There are some discussions regarding that, but currently they're not.
Okay. And if that is to proceed, we can inform the coordinators down the line on that.
Yep.
Okay. Can performance ratings be entered in by the evaluators?
If your evaluators are willing to take the time to enter ratings, you absolutely can do that. They can enter ratings through the online testing system. There is a performance rating entry password that you can supply them, and as long as you're comfortable with their ability to enter them accurately, you could certainly have your evaluators enter.
Great.
And you're going to have a lot of other jealous schools if you get that.
If you get that, that's right. And can substitute teachers be performance evaluators?
The best scenario would be not to have any teachers serving as performance evaluators. And I guess some of that's going to boil down to the judgment of the school. Really, it's important that you make sure, however you're handling evaluators or proctors or testing procedures, that whatever decisions you're made can't be questioned later on, so that the integrity of your testing program is not being questioned. So if you had a substitute teacher that regularly fills in, I would say no. And I'm guessing, and I don't know this, but just I'm thinking that probably for cosmetology, maybe the substitute teachers are the same ones, used regularly because they have some content knowledge. And so you would not want those individuals that regularly interact with the students and or the teaching staff to be serving as evaluators.
Okay. Is it acceptable for our child care students to complete the performance exam off-site at a child care center where they complete their practical hours?
We have had a couple cases where that question was asked, and certainly if there is a child care center and you have people that are willing to evaluate from that child care center, you could take your students as a group, as long as the jobs and the equipment and materials are set up correctly and all of the security is maintained, and that would include someone having to accompany that group of students that is not the teacher, because teachers cannot have access to the test materials.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can make all of those things work, you could take your students to a child care center or your cosmetology students to a hair salon, etc. The other thing that schools, I've been hearing a little bit more about this the last couple of years, if there is a school with a similar program that's located close enough to you, you could have all the students, depending on lab space, test together and share evaluators. So maybe one year you test at my school, the next year we go to your school, but that way each of us are supplying evaluators, which might make that a little bit easier to get those people.
Great. Heidi, can you please address an instructor's wife, husband, or sibling serving as an evaluator?
Again, I would say no, and it goes back to that integrity point that I had mentioned before. You want to make sure, brother-in-law, close friend, sister, husband, you would have to wonder about those individuals being as impartial as they need to be, and you would not ever want someone to question results or to come back and ask who evaluated, oh, the instructor's spouse. So really, I would say stay away from that type of a scenario, and make sure as you're selecting evaluators that there wouldn't be any reason for anyone to question the situation.
And the schools also want to keep in mind that all the evaluators and proctors should be reviewed and approved by the school administrators as well. Okay. Heidi, if a student is absent...
Lori, can I butt in real quick? Sorry. The comment about the evaluators and proctors being approved by the school administration, I think that's very important. I'm recalling a situation when you said that, Lori, where we ended up with a security concern with an evaluator situation, and the administrators at the school were not even aware and really were not involved, and I think even on down to the site coordinator with the selection of evaluators. So it is very important, site coordinators, that you and the administration are aware of who is evaluating, what their role is, what their occupation is, what they do for a living, just kind of approving that and working with your teachers to make sure that you have the best people in place.
And the administrators sign the testing agreements, so they should be aware of all those policies as well. Okay, Kevin, I have a question for you. If a student is taking the NOCTI in the 13th year, how are they reported on PIMS? As an SUG, there is no place to report grade 13 on PIMS.
Okay, I'm going to have to defer that question. If you could have the person that has that particular question send that to me, I'll check with the PIM staff. I don't want to make any broad statements here about PIMS without
Very
consulting
good.
with them.
We'll get an accurate answer on that and then have that available and email the person that asked it as well. Thank you, Kevin. Heidi, if a student is absent and takes a test on a different date than the rest of the class, how do we make sure that student is reported on the class report and not on a separate report?
If you, and you may just want to do this in general, but if you think you're going to run into a situation, which I'm sure a lot of you do, where you have absent students that need to make up a test, I would encourage you, before you release the test for scoring, to create groups. You can create groups at the Client Services Center, so you could create, and you name them whatever you want, you know, Mrs. Smith's carpentry class, and then as you're releasing students for scoring, you're releasing to a group. There's information about grouping at the Client Services Center. There's actually a drop-down box when you are releasing students that you can choose to release them to the test date, which is what groups them all on a score report, or you can release to a group. And if you do that, if you create a group and release to a group, anytime you release another student to the group, the score report updates with that student's information. And so that's the best way to ensure that all of your students are going to show up on the same score report, even if they test on different days.
Great. That was a good question.
And that actually can work backward, and I don't know how many schools may have this situation, but if you have 2 instructors teaching in the same program and all the kids are going to be testing on the same day, but you'd like to have your score reports divided by those 2 instructors, you could create a group for each instructor and release their students to their particular group, and that way you'd be separating score reports. Or an AM and a PM class. If you wanted all of your AM students to show up on one score report, all of your PM students to show up on a separate score report, you could create a group for each, and that would ensure that that would happen.
Great. Okay, next question. Is there a report that lists all PSC levels achieved for all students at a site code on one spreadsheet of an Excel workbook?
Yes and no. Mandy showed the screenshot where if you plug in your date range and you use the Select All button and export to Excel, everybody is going to be downloaded into one workbook. Each test title, though, is going to have its own sheet within that workbook. If you need everybody to be on one great big Excel sheet, all you'd have to do is just, copy and paste everybody into one, but they will all download all together at the same time into one workbook. You just have tabs at the bottom for each test title.
Great. Next question. Does the student have to have an IEP to receive TTS capabilities?
And Lori, I know that Pennsylvania has some guidelines for accommodations as well, but NOCTI's policy for text-to-speech is that text-to-speech is intended to assist students that have that requirement as part of their IEP.
Correct.
So if a student does not have text-to-speech as part of their IEP, they should not be given that accommodation.
And Pennsylvania follows that rule as well.
And that would apply to text-to-speech, and also part of text-to-speech is an enlarged print. When you mouse over a question, the font is expanded, so students need to have an accommodation before they're allowed that option.
Okay. How do we access the teacher password for the restricted site?
The password for teacher resources is located at your Client Services Center. So log into your Client Services Center, click on Resources, and you'll see right on the main page there's a list of passwords. There is the teacher resources password that you provide to your teachers. They'll need that and their site and your school site code. There's also the performance entry password. So if you have your evaluators, if they're going to help you enter ratings, that's the password that they use. And then there's also a practice test password that you can provide your tech staff so that they can make sure that the computers are going to function properly with online testing. But they're rate and locate resources at the Client Services Center.
Okay. Can retired teachers proctor the test?
You could, and I know that that does happen. You could have retired teaching staff come in to serve as proctors. Again, I would just say that you want to consider their relationship with the school, I guess. You know, how are they in the classroom all the time? Are they coming back? Are they mentoring the new teacher? Depending on, you know, what their relationship is once they're retired, you would just want to take that into consideration. Again, it goes back to that question of protecting the integrity of the testing program.
Mm-hmm. Heidi, a follow-up to the question regarding the daycare center. If we use a daycare center off-site for the testing, does the school representative need to stay on-site at all times?
That's really not necessarily a NACD question, other than we would need to ensure that the NACD test materials are secure, and we would be concerned if there was not a school representative there, someone other than the teacher safeguarding the security of the assessments and making sure that, you know, the performance testing is running the way that it should. But I would assume also that the school would not want students unsupervised, you know, or accompanied, I guess, by non-school personnel during something that's school related. I would think that your school may have a policy about that, but we definitely would want someone there other than the teacher ensuring security of the materials and the process.
Great. Just a note to everybody, it is 12 o'clock. We did schedule the webinar till 12. We have a couple more questions that we can stay on and answer, so feel free to stay on with us if you'd like. Heidi, if using a former student as an evaluator, how long should they have graduated? How long ago should they have graduated?
I would say a couple of things to that. They would, I would assume, need to be out in the workplace for a period of time before they would be, you know, considered an expert in their field and capable of impartially evaluating students. I think that that's something that you'd have to have some experience under your belt, you know, and be pretty confident in your job before you would want to be coming back to evaluate a performance test. I would think it would also need to be ensured that they are far enough removed that they would not have any kind of, you know, friendships and that kind of thing with the students that they're evaluating, possibly even that they weren't taught by the teacher. You know, if they were taught by that teacher and then coming back to evaluate, I'm not sure as far as integrity goes how that may work. And you would want to consider also any potential siblings or relatives that that person may have at the school as well. And you might want to consider, I mean, you should probably consider that anyway when you're picking your evaluators, you know, making sure that there aren't any relationships there that could be a situation.
Next question. I do all online testing for multiple choice, but just this year I received word from an IEP teacher that her student is to be excused from any computer testing. So he would need to do paper pencil only. Is it possible to order a single paper pencil version of the written test for that specific student? The answer is yes, that you can order the paper pencil version if that is required by the IEP. Heidi, do you want to talk a little bit about that process and the ordering?
If you have a student that needs to have a paper pencil version, we would encourage you to make a connection with Lori's office at Penn State to let them know the situation, get approval for that. And then also we would ask that you call in and talk with our order department so that we can make special arrangements. The order form that's available to you is all online testing. And so we could make that just kind of a separate order and take care of it on an individual basis. But we would definitely make a paper pencil version available for students if the IEP required it.
Great. If TTS is not specifically in the IEP, will the all tests read aloud accommodation satisfy this requirement?
If I'm understanding the question correctly, if the IEP states a requirement of all tests being read aloud, would they be able to use TTS for that student? And if that is the question, yes. You know, if all tests being read aloud, you might want to check this with your staff that handles IEPs and writes the IEPs to verify, but I would say that text-to-speech would satisfy that requirement.
Okay. And for ordering, when you're ordering TTS, the question is, we can order all tests and then add TTS and added time after we receive them and assign our students. Is that correct?
That is correct. You can go ahead and just place your order with no text-to-speech for anyone, and then once user codes are issued for the test and you've assigned those to particular students, you can go into that individual user code and add the text-to-speech feature and or add additional time if needed.
Great. Another question, where can you get information from the scoring reports for IEP reports indicating information similar to the PSSA, Proficient, Advanced, and Basic?
Lori, are you clear on what that question is?
I am not. I am not.
Asking,
I'm reading it again. It says, where can you get information from the scoring reports for IEP reports indicating information similar to the PSSA for the IEP students? We may have to reread that question and contact the person that asked it and get some clarity on that.
Sure. You know, I'm wondering if they're just needing that individual student's PSC report. But yeah, let's follow up with that. I'm not sure.
Okay. Okay. I believe we have answered all of the questions that are out there. We will be putting these questions and answers together in a flyer to put on our website. We will also be putting the PowerPoint presentations used by myself and by Heidi and Mandy on our website, along with the recording of the webinar today. I'm checking to see if any other questions are coming in for us. I don't believe we have any more. If you do have questions after the webinar, please email me, or please email Heidi or Kevin with any of those questions. We can add them to the rest of the questions. When you received your email regarding the webinar, you received an agenda and an evaluation form. We ask that you take a minute to fill that evaluation form out and fax it to our office. Heidi, I'd like to thank you and Mandy for all the information, and Kevin for the information that you provided on the Pennsylvania requirements. And I'd like to thank you all for participating this year. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact us. Thank you.